See, we're unmuted. Yep, that works.
Hey, how are you?
Here.
Yeah, that's about right for now. Oh, all right. We have a lot of hymns today.
We have 4 hymns today, I believe.
Well, I was given 5.
Oh,
And just a friendly reminder to make sure you turn off your mic when I'm singing during the hymns.
yes, I know. I'm reminded every time I forget.
Yeah.
By multiple people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grinch Stole Christmas, huh?
Yes. Yeah, if you notice my mic is on, just do this.
Oh, okay. Because you can turn it off right there, can't you? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to be a pest, but
No,
especially with your voice like it is today, you know, it's probably not going to be good. Yeah.
I should email him. But it like messed the whole app. Yeah. I looked at like the it's so janky. Yeah, I'll be up. He's gonna be there, so I'll probably just stand right here.
I am feeling better.
Okay, well I won't directly play into it.
This currently on?
Yeah, we can adjust it based off. If he wants to go more bass, we could.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. Today is December 2nd, 2023. It is a joy to be together. I'm the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. I'm joined on our chancel by our worship associate, Charlie Ahern, by our volunteers, by our pianist, Bill Carpenter, by our guest musicians, by our AV volunteers, by all of you who have decided on this very cold, very gray December morning that the best place you can be is here. We are so glad that you have made that decision and that we are here together. Two programming notes as we begin. You'll notice that the sanctuary is set up a little bit differently this morning. This is our setup for town halls and congregational meetings. We have a town hall immediately following this worship service. We set this up so that we can sit in a circle and talk about what's happening at the congregation, so that we can look at each other instead of just at some leaders at the front of the room. The other thing that I'll say is that this is not my usual vocal register. I've been sick much of the week, so you'll see me with a mask on most of the time today, unless I'm speaking. If I am standoffish and don't shake your hand or don't give you a hug, it is not because I am inherently standoffish. It is because I don't want to be patient zero. Our treasurer is also at home sick today. It's December. This is a good reminder. If you have not gotten your flu vaccinations, your COVID vaccinations, please go do that. If you do not feel well, please stay home. There is a live stream camera right there. Please participate in that way if you're not feeling well. with that, I will say, we begin each service with the vision of this congregation, that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln is a loving community uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and transform the world. That is a big and overarching vision on occasionally mundane and cloudy days, which is as it should be. It should be pointing us towards what we are building together. So let us be about the work of building that. And we'll start today by lighting our chalice with words from Charlie Ahern.
Good morning. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart.
Our opening hymn is number 353 in the gray hymnal and above me. Bill will play it through once, and then we will join on the second time through.
If anyone would like to come forward for the story, you're welcome to do so now. I have something special in my house. It's a fuzzy green journal that has an ongoing list. This list is almost like magic. Magic in my very own house, in a small, fuzzy green journal. I've been writing in this journal ever since I was in high school, although I'll go months without adding something sometimes. It's been a culmination of many years, lots of ideas. This list is rather simple, but it holds a lot of power. The list is composed of things that make me smile. The magic that's within the journal is that even when I'm very sad or upset or mad or stressed out, whenever I read a page of the journal, my mood changes. I feel more relaxed. I smile. A sense of calm washes over me. The entries in the journal vary. Sometimes I'll write a paragraph or a whole page about something that happened in my day that brought me joy. But mostly it's just really simple things, ordinary things, things that I may not think about every day. But when I do think about them, I am filled with a sense of gratitude and happiness. So here are some of the items that I've listed. Little purple flowers with white centers. Wearing a bathrobe right when it comes out of the dryer on a cold winter night. Pumpkin bread with extra nutmeg. Children's artwork and asking them about it. Fireflies. Chai tea extra spicy. The fact that squirrels only remember where they hide their acorns about 20% of the time, which means they're otherwise just out there planting trees. Telling my soup to get delicious. Dancing in the kitchen. Calling them gergengergators because it's hard to tell whether they're an alligator or a crocodile, so I'm just going to make up a word. Watching my daughter Mira blow out candles on her birthday cake. Hearing Logan read a letter that he wrote out loud. Milo building a castle out of wooden blocks and Christmas lights at school. These items on my list are relatively simple, ordinary things, and yet I wouldn't necessarily remember these things if I didn't specifically name them. In March, I asked members of the congregation to share some of their moments of wonder and awe as well. This is what some of you all shared. Hiking across the Grand Canyon, a cardinal perched outside my window in the fresh snow, people sharing their experience, strength, and hope and recovery, showing my children the Milky Way in a state park for the first time. There were many more moments as well. And as we shared, I asked people to pour some sand into our communal art activity, which is why we have these jars of sand along the pulpit decoration today. There is so much in this world that can spark moments of wonder and awe in our lives. How incredible when we get to share these moments with one another, with another human. What a beautiful gift. Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered whether someone you love is looking up at it at the exact same time as you? Have you studied the glimmering raindrops on a spider's web? Have you received a phone call or a message from someone at the exact moment you were thinking of them? Have you stood at the edge of the ocean and overlooked the enormity of the world before you? Have you laid in the forest on a summer's afternoon at the base of the trees and listened to the wind rustle in the trees? Thought perhaps there was a message for you in that sound somewhere. Have you considered ideas such as your being in the exact right spot at the right time and how that has affected your life's path? You looked into someone's eyes and felt so connected that you couldn't possibly imagine your life without them. Have you admired the colors in the sunset or had your breath taken away when the geese fly overhead at just the right moment to remind you of your one wild and precious life? When did you last blow on the seeds of a dandelion or wish upon a star? When did you last write down what your dreams were the night before, or even better, tell someone else about them? This season, this month, holds many mixed emotions. Some of us are tired. exhausted from expectations of creating and holding traditions for family and friends, rustling from here to there and bustling with the demands of the month. Some of us are sad, missing those who cannot be with us due to a loss. We are lonely, wishing our circumstances were different. And some of us are excited, planning the next adventure or time with loved ones. Maybe seeing the world through our children's eyes or grandchildren's eyes, or if you're really lucky, great-grandchildren's eyes. No matter where you are at today or where you will be in the coming weeks, I invite you to embrace the collective effervescence that happens in December around here. The feelings of gratitude, mystery, wonder, and magic which may occur, if only for a moment, if only for a minute. Perhaps it is even within this space, in this place. So if you choose to, look at your hands for a moment or feel their presence. You here now, this life, this being, this breath, this moment is a small miracle in and of itself. Thank you for your presence today. That is the end of our story, and the children and youth are dismissed to their classes as our next song plays.
Thank you for that. Welcome. Excuse me. I'm Mary Kay Stillwell, a member of the Board of Trustees and a worship associate here at the church. I want to offer a special welcome to those of you who are visiting us for the first time. I hope you'll come back and back and back. The announcements this morning. The second town hall will be held after service today, December 3rd. This is your opportunity to ask questions about the issues up for a vote at the winter congregational meeting next Sunday, December 10th. Join us Saturday, December 9th at 5:30 for the annual soup supper. Sign up in the gallery after service. The Social Justice Committee is raising funds for the Echo Collective through sales of chocolate and coffee this month. Stop by the table in the gallery after service. And there are going to be some special services this month, so check out the December newsletter for details. A central part of our services is the time we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and then they're woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified, and we are comforted in our sorrows. I invite you to type into the chat or speak into the shared space your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in sorrow.
Laura Lee.
Laura Lee. Laura Lee. Bill Conway. Bill Conway. Who? Julie Gibson. Julie Gibson, thank you.
Two women I looked up to, Rosalind Carter and Sandra Day O'Connor.
Two extraordinary women, Rosalind Carter and Sandra Day O'Connor. Henry Kissinger. Nothing yet from the chat. I invite you to type into the chat or speak into the shared space your name or the name of another you wish to be remembered in joy. Olivia.
Lynn Howard and her 4 friends who answered my SOS when Max was missing.
Oh, Lynn Howard and her 4 friends who answered Judy's SOS when Max went on exploring the world.
Brian and Stephen.
Brian and Stephen.
Mark is home.
Who's home?
Mark.
Mark is home. Here is a sorrow that's just coming in. Phyllis Conway is in the hospital, was in the hospital after car accident, doing better. Hello to all.
I have a joy for all the readers who participated in our reading on Monday and Wednesday.
All the joy for the reading and all the readers who took place Tuesday, wasn't it? Over the Tavern, the play.
The new Unitarians who joined Justice in Action research teams.
The new Unitarians who joined the Justice in Action teams. We know, too, that there are some joys and some sorrows that are yet unspoken, but still deeply felt. Let us hold a moment of silence for everything unspoken. Thank you for your presence. Please remain seated and join me in singing number 9, No Longer Forward Nor Behind.
Each week, we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, and our treasure. As the musicians play, the ushers will pass our offering plates. You can also give by texting UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. The offering will now be gratefully received.
One of the big things that's happening in our movement this year is that Unitarian Universalism is considering a change to some of our foundational documents. the Article 2 of our bylaws, which you hopefully are tired of me talking about, but it is December, so you've got another 6 months of it. We're doing this because we are an evolving faith. And so in June, the association as a whole will vote on changes to Article 2 of our bylaws. And all through this year, we're taking pieces of the proposal and using it as the theme for a month of worship. So in December, we're taking the theme of mystery from the new language. And here's what the proposed language says about mystery. Direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and currently practiced. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. Pick up more on that in the sermon. For now, if you would please rise in body or in spirit. Our next hymn is number 123, Spirit of Life.
This reading is titled The Oversoul, written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul where we, the effect, cease, and God, the cause, begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events that the will I call mine. There is deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whosoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. The soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. For ever and ever the influx of this better and more universal self is new and unsearchable. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breathes through our will, it is virtue. When it flows through our affections, it is love.
This is the first Sunday in December. For those who this means something, this is the first Sunday of Advent. So if you would, please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our next carol this time, number 241 in the gray hymnal, In the Bleak Midwinter. I love congregational meeting time because this is my favorite setup for this room. We may keep this a little ways into January because it's nice to come back to. All right. So it is December, which means that I can start reading Ailish, one of my favorite books. You might know it. This is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. For anybody watching online, that's what I just held up. It's a favorite in our house every December. In it, Dr. Seuss tells the story of the Grinch, a large, hairy grump whose defining feature is his hatred of Christmas. The noise, the toys, the feast, especially the singing. And on Christmas Eve, provoked by sounds of merriment from Whoville next door, he decides to stop Christmas from coming. He sneaks into Whoville in the middle of the night and steals all the decorations and gifts for the holiday. It was dawn, the story goes. All the who's still abed, all the who's still a snooze. When he packed up his sled, packed it up with the presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. And then, at the top of Mount Crumpet, the Grinch turns to listen for the who's crying, because he's taken all their presents, all their tinsel, all their trapping, all the canned roast beast, and is astounded instead to hear the voice of the who's singing. The Grinch puzzles about it. It says that he puzzles 3 hours. He puzzles till his puzzler is sore. And what happened then, the story goes? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light and brought back the toys, the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. At least that's what they say in Whoville. But what do we say? Can a heart grow 3 sizes just by some singing? I hope so, otherwise I'm in the wrong business. But what happened on Mount Crumpet? What happens in that story? Dr. Seuss doesn't answer. He says, in Whoville, they say. But that's not actually an answer, that's a story. I don't think it was anything the Grinch thought of. He puzzled till his puzzler was sore. 3 hours. So what changed his mind? What changed his heart? Direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. The proposed Unitarian Universalist Article 2 includes that these experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. I think that's what happens to the Grinch, though I'm pretty sure he's not Unitarian. A direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder changes his heart, opens his heart, renews his spirit, transforms his life. But I actually think Dr. Seuss gets the poetry right in a way that a paragraph of bylaws doesn't quite. Because the answer isn't answered directly. The question isn't answered directly. Just that in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. I think part of the problem that we run into, you're never supposed to do this as a preacher, complain about the difficulty of the text you're preaching from. But that paragraph from the UUA is dense, and it's prose, and it digests like a brick when you're trying to preach it. But part of the problem, and because this is true of our current language too, it's not just a problem with the new stuff that we're trying to bring in. Part of the problem is it's trying to capture in words what is not an experience that really lends itself to words. Right, the block of text that the UUA gives to describe these moments of mystery, wonder, and awe isn't that different from what Emerson was trying to talk about when he talked about the oversoul. What Freud talked about when he talked about the oceanic feeling that he never experienced, but he knew that other people had. The concept is ineffable. Literally unspeakable, ineffable. Because it is beyond human language. That moment of transcendent mystery and wonder that is just past what we can put into words. It isn't the realm of bylaws, it's the realm of mystics and poets that we then try and put into bylaws. Last month, I went to a gathering of Unitarian ministers called Prairie Group. It's a study group that Unitarian Universalist ministers have been holding continuously for almost 70 years now, always in the same place, always with the same format, 5 academic papers delivered and debated over lodge tables and mediocre state park dining facilities. And for most of, somebody described it as no exit. It's like a Sartre film. You just return with the same people year in and year out in the same room and have some of the same arguments every year. But one of the traditions is that at the end of the second day, after paper 3 of 5, when everyone's a little strung out on heady conversations about theology, someone suggests that the group climb the bluffs behind the lodge overlooking the Missouri River. And it's a beautiful setting, looking out over the river at sunset, hearing the wind whistle through the trees, remembering all of the people who have been there for 70 years, taking this same walk as a break from some of these same arguments. We're connected through the generations in the midst of this beautiful place, this transcendent moment. And this year, as a dozen of us stood at the overlook, one of my colleagues suggested to a group of Unitarian ministers that we try not talking for 2 minutes, just experiencing the moment together, trying not to put words to it. So we're going to try that. A version for this morning for 2 minutes. And I'm going to time us. I want you to think of a time that you've experienced the ineffable in your life, a moment of transcending mystery or wonder, something that was too big for words. Whatever that means to you, spend 2 minutes trying to remember what that was like. We'll begin now. Congratulations. The group of 12 Unitarian ministers was categorically unable to do that. We lasted 1 minute and 45 seconds in that group. Why is that so hard? Why is silence so hard, among other things? And one answer is that we live in a culture that values extroversion. Being friendly, outgoing, talkative, all of that is usually coded as desirable, while the introverted loners are usually written as trouble. Think about the Grinch. Who's the good guy in this story? The bad guy in the story is the one who lives alone on the mountain and doesn't like to sing, while the virtuous Whos live in town and sing and party together all the time. Those terrible Whos. So we're raised up, the Whos are raised up as the people to be, but also, silence is often an invitation to the unknown, and the unknown is often coded as frightening. There's probably some deep evolutionary biology here, but the things that we do not understand are often more upsetting than things that are familiar but risky. So a concrete example of this is a lot of people are afraid of spiders, right? I worry around this time of year about sticking my hand ungloved into a pile of leaves in my backyard. And yet there are less than 3 deaths from spider bites in the United States every year. Meanwhile, I didn't think twice this morning about strapping myself into a 3,000-pound machine made out of metal and plastic, propelled by exploding fossil fuels, flying down a concrete floor at 40 miles an hour, faster than the fastest human can run. No, that's fine. We do that every day. The things that we are familiar with and put words to are easier to be around than the unknown. But we also struggle with silence, we struggle with mystery and wonder, we struggle with the ineffable, because our religious tradition, this particular religious tradition, Unitarian Universalism, centers words. So I spent a lot of time this last spring in chapels. While I was on sabbatical, I spent a lot of days walking, and I rarely managed to pass a church without poking my head in. And because I was in the UK, most of the churches that I poked my head into were Church of England. And almost always, the setup in the chapel in those churches looked something like this. That's St. Anselm's Chapel in Canterbury Cathedral. So they often didn't look quite that fancy. But that part's not as important. What's important is how the room is set up. In some ways, it looks like this setup. It's rows of chairs facing each other. But notice what's in front. That's an altar, not a pulpit. The Church of England is a sacramental tradition. And in most of the chapels that I was in, pride of place was given to the altar, the table where communion is served. So a brief theological digression here. Communion is one of the central rituals in most Christian denominations. It comes out of the Bible, the story of Jesus gathering his students together the night before he was arrested. The story goes that he passed around bread and wine and said, "This is my body that is broken for you. Take, eat." And then later he says, "Do this in remembrance of me." And just about every Christian denomination takes that to be really important. That moment, that night, to be of central importance to the faith. But what part is most important has been the center of a lot of friction. So for the Church of England, it's that first part. This is my body. Right? The belief is that in some ways, the bread served at communion is the person of God. And their liturgy emphasizes the presence of God in the bread and wine at communion. This is my body, this is my blood. That's the important part. In these traditions, communion is called a sacrament, a sacred act. In other Christian traditions, and I want to be clear that Unitarianism was absolutely one of these. We had communion in our hymnal until 3 hymnals ago. They put more emphasis on the second part, do this in remembrance of me. They celebrate communion not primarily because God is present in the bread and wine, but because the founder of the religion said to do so. Right? Because the teacher of our teacher of our teacher of our teacher said, do this thing to remember me and remember this night. Do this in remembrance of me becomes a kind of memorial. In these traditions, communion is an ordinance, something that God or Jesus directed us to do. But the thing is, whether it's a sacrament or an ordinance, communion points participants towards the ineffable, towards the unspoken, either by pointing to bread and saying, there is God, or remembering a moment, a night, maybe 2,000 years ago, that transcended language. Remember. And in many places of worship, that's what's at the center. Contrast that to what's behind me. Our UU tradition doesn't exactly center the ineffable, the unspoken. It centers the pulpit, front and center in many of our churches. The pulpit, the sermon, the written word, and I love that. It's defensible. I work out my whole relationship with the ineffable through words. That's kind of my gig. And especially in seasons like the one we've been in, full of budgets and bylaws, moments of transcending wonder and joy can feel very far from the day-to-day workings of a church. But this model of having one pulpit in the center explaining things feels comfortable. But the danger of this approach is that it turns the ineffable into a riddle to solve. It turns transcendence into a mystery novel rather than a mystery to behold. This is a really Unitarian Universalist way to approach things. If we just tally up the evidence for and against God's existence, we'll decide whether we're theists or humanists. Miracle stories often have a scientific explanation, so that's what we'll focus on. Figuring out how a puzzle fits together can feel like holy work. There's a clarity that happens when the last piece falls into place, when the perfect sermon explains a concept in a way that hasn't quite made sense before. When we're studying and suddenly we understand. But also sometimes that's not enough. Because sometimes we puzzle 3 hours till our puzzler is sore and not get at the thing. One of my favorite professors in seminary was a guy named Kendall Solon. Lots of people in this room have heard this story before, but it's one of my favorites at this time of year. Dr. Solon was the systematics professor at Wesley Theological Seminary. He was one of the most theologically conservative members of the faculty. He teaches at Candler now. And Unitarian students did get a little bit of a pass from him because we were, by definition, unable to be dinged by him as insufficiently orthodox. That just sort of bounced off of us in his critique. Or if he tried that and called us unorthodox, we would take it as a badge of honor rather than an area of needed improvement. But we still had to do the reading that was assigned. We still had to suffer through a 2-semester class on the Apostles' Creed. And one of my favorite Kendall Solon moments happened about halfway through the class. And he'd been trying to make this point for months, and none of us had gotten it. And he finally, we were probably talking about either the presence of God in communion or the Trinity, one of these things that transcends words, but the whole class was trying to use words to describe. And he finally stopped the class. And this very doctrinaire, very orthodox theologian said, what we're talking about right now is a mystery of faith. And the thing that makes me craziest about the English language is how we treat mystery. Because we treat it like a mystery to be solved. We treat it like a puzzle, a riddle that has an end. And that's not the kind of mystery that theologians have been talking about for 2,000 years. If the mystery of communion was a puzzle that could be solved, it would not be a thing after 2,000 years. The mystery of faith is that it is a thing that gets deeper the closer that you look at it, not that it gets solved. Mysteries are ineffable, places where language fails. A mystery, he said, is looking at your beloved for 50 years and then waking up on the 51st year and seeing something you haven't before that makes you fall in love with them again. That's the mystery of faith, not a puzzle to be solved. That's the ineffable. That's transcendent mystery. That's wonder. That's what we're talking about. And then because it makes the story better, he dismissed the class, and we all went and thought about that for 2 hours. In reality, we all puzzled for a second and then went back to trying to use language to explain the Trinity. And he went back to calling us unorthodox and rolling his eyes at the Unitarians. But a mystery is what happens to the Grinch at the top of Mount Crumpet. When his heart grows 3 sizes that day, the more that you look at that story, the more that is there. It doesn't have a simple answer. So our theme for the month of December, from now until the beginning of the new year, is mystery. Not riddle, not puzzle, not something that needs to be solved. But the mystery is an invitation to go past moments that need language. Moments of awe and wonder where our heart grows 3 sizes and we don't quite know how. May you be open to those moments in this season and in all your days. Amen. We'll have one more piece of music from our guests and then begin to move into a town hall, which will be puzzling but not mysterious. All right. As we move towards the end of our worship service this morning, go in peace, go in kindness, and go in faith, and go in the mystery that doesn't quite get captured by words. But don't go far, because in 19 minutes, that's 10 moments of silence, we'll gather back in here for our town hall. For now, if you would rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 337, in the gray hymnal or above me, Have I Not Known?